Hey Ken, how are you?
Hey, Tom, great. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Nice to see you again.
You too. Thanks.
Yeah, the first we met just a couple of weeks ago in Chicago.
Yeah, we're at the Cabinet Makers Association National Conference, and I had the opportunity to listen to you and hear you and get to know you a little bit. And it was great. So I'm glad we were able to extend that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great. I got to actually have breakfast and lunch with two of your top guys as well, which was nice.
I hope they paid. Those guys are tough. You know.
Yeah, they paid every time. Trust me,
All right, good,
they
good
paid
answer.
every time. Yeah. So today we're here to talk about something that's actually kind of been your specialty within the Cabinet Makers Association is talking about job costing. Every time I had conversations throughout the conference about that, your name came up because I suppose you've delivered this material a couple times and you're really well known for how concise you keep it. Can you tell us a little bit about your background before we get into that?
Sure, great. I've been in business 34 years. I kind of came out of high school and got the opportunity to work as a apprentice, learned to be a carpenter, decided I liked it, and went back to a technical college, Wentworth in Boston,
Mm.
Wentworth Institute of Technology, and got a degree building construction. And then started working with some guys I met in college building houses, and loved it. And I was a carpenter, so I decided that I could go off and do my own thing, and started my own carpentry business, more
As
or
you
less,
do.
which was
Yeah.
really working by the hour for people swinging a hammer. And the
So
jobs got bigger and bigger.
so were you doing framing carpentry or what level of carpentry did
Yeah,
you start?
all through whole houses, remodeling all whole house. I think my first job was a deck, but it turned into doing some custom homes, and that's when life changed for me to become either you know a carpenter that built a house a year or a businessman and managing. And that transition happened, and I'm glad that it did. I still take a lot of pride in what we do, although I'm not doing the physical work myself, and it's been a number of years.
Yeah. It's funny that the situation you just explained there is something I talk about a lot when I'm working with people. It's actually a coaching question I ask, which is, are you a businessman who happens to be a contractor, or are you a contractor with a couple of guys?
I know that I'm a businessman now, but I started off as a carpenter with some guys working for me, and it's a total different approach.
What happened? When did you make that shift? Do you remember a job or a day or a drive home that you're just frustrated when you said something's got to change?
Perfect question. I have this answer for sure. I was fortunate enough to get known as a good finish carpenter and builder, and I was building a custom home, swinging the hammer myself. I was going to hang 10 doors in a house that day because I could do that
Superman. You're a
back
Superman.
then. Well, yeah, sure. But the day was the house came out was going out beautiful. I was doing the finished carpentry work. Went to go hang my doors, and back then we had pagers, and the pager was going off, and then the plumber would stop by, or the homeowner, or the architect would stop by, and I'd want to entertain them and walk them through. And at the end of the day, I had like maybe two doors hung. I felt completely frustrated that I did not do my job today. And it was a horrible feeling because there's such a sense of pride in our trade. At the end of the day, to look back and say, "Wow, I did this today. I can't wait to get back there tomorrow." So it was a real frustration level. I'm sure I'd been thinking about things further along the way, but I decided at that point you had to make a choice. I was going to stay a carpenter and stay at a certain level, or I was going to put the tools down and learn how to really understand business and numbers and make a business. And that was the choice I made. And that was probably about 7 years into my career
Wow.
as a builder. I was doing well. I had guys working for me, subcontractors. I was marking things up. I had learned how to price jobs, but I was working for my pay every day. And when I didn't put doors up or wood on the wall, as I like to say, I didn't feel like I was earning my keep.
Yeah, I think about that situation often, and you're going to laugh about when I think about it, because as you know, I'm not on the tools. But it comes when I'm trying to mow the lawn and my phone keeps going off, and it's a text message, and it's a WhatsApp message, and an email alert. And I think to myself, how does a contractor who's trying to build a business have any time to get anything done, especially if they're on a ladder or on a lift or something, and that darn phone keeps going off? It's got to
Yeah,
be incredibly frustrating.
yeah, yeah. And I see with my guys, they're working and they're on their phone sometimes, and I got to say, listen, we got to limit this. If it's an emergency, great, but
Yeah,
use
we're
it
not
on
here.
break. it can be dangerous.
It can be very dangerous. I mean, some shop floors don't allow phones at all, and other ones it's part of job, punching into jobs. Just to stay on this for a little bit more, what was the first thing you did when you realized that day when you're supposed to hang 10 doors and you only hung 2? What was the first thing you did to start moving towards now being known as the job costing guru at CMA?
Well, I knew I couldn't hang 20 doors the next day. That was for sure, 18 doors.
Yeah.
No, I took some initiative in getting some training through conferences. There's something around us called Journal of Light Construction. They do publications, and JLC ran a conference trade show type of thing. So I would participate in those and started signing up for some classes. I joined a peer networking group of industries professionals. There was a mentor and a coach, and would go once a week. I brought one of my lead guys when that happened. Learned more about businesses and in different perspectives. Met other business people. Did a lot of networking. I like to talk, as you'll see here, and it kind of built over time. The problems I had, other people had. The
Right.
successes I had, I was able to share, and other people were able to share that. So it's not much different than what we're doing today, or what being on the board of directors with the cabinet makers has offered that opportunity as well. So it's a give and take. I like to say it's a spiral staircase. We at one level I have a problem or a success, and it's at whatever level I'm at. And as time goes on, I get all the way back around. I'm at the same point, a little bit higher, a little bit more. A little bit higher pressure maybe, or a bigger problem, but the same problem. It's employees, it's cash flow, it's something to do with something they've already dealt with in the past, and it's just a here we go again type of thing. But you learn, and you learn from others.
Yeah, well, we've got coaching language for that. It's called the steps to learning, where you move from unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent. I won't get into it now. It's a bit confusing.
I can relate.
I'll end up sounding like either Phoebe or Joey from Friends if I do the explanation without a whiteboard behind me, so we'll leave it. But one of the things, because I saw your presentation, and one of the things that stuck out to me is moving from that yellow pad to the electronic version of estimating. Because really job costing starts, let me step back. Ken, where does effective job costing start?
In estimating.
Yeah.
Really, you've got to come up with a way to apply the dollar values and markups and so forth. And the way I learned was per item. I build a house, I build a cabinet, I build a project on paper, a piece at a time. I may be able to put some groupings together or make some assumptions. But we came up with a formula. You mentioned the yellow pad. When we used to estimate before computers and all that kind of stuff, it was 3 columns: labor, materials, and subs. And you'd write down everything you're going to do on the job, and write down your materials, and you write down the material cost. Maybe get that from the lumberyard or from historical data, and then get a price from the subs or guesstimate at that. And then the biggest challenge still is the number of hours it's going to take to do a task. And I'd add all those up at the bottom, and if I did it 3 times and it came out to the same number, I knew I was right. And then I would put a markup on. And we'll talk about markup versus margin maybe a little bit later.
Absolutely.
It's a really important piece, probably one of the most important pieces for most people. But, it adds something for overhead and profit. Earlier on, you thought it was all profit, but you realized that you had to buy a computer, or you had to hire someone to help with bookkeeping or
insurance, or put gas in the truck.
Yeah, tools. And where does that money come from? It comes from this thing called profit, So that the yellow pad turned into kind of a standardized pad. Then it turned into an electronic version on, an Excel sheet, basically.
Right.
And then for myself and my company, I was looking for the canned solution. I was trying to buy different programs at the time. We didn't have the cloud-based stuff back then, but I'd buy a program or a book, and it just wasn't my way of thinking. I couldn't seem to buy that perfect canned solution for me. So I hired a consultant that was good with Excel, and they basically did what we're doing, interviewed me, and we built it on paper. I built a house on paper.
Right.
And I created phases of construction with numbers, titles, and a way to describe what I was doing. We formulated the Excel sheet. It's really an Excel program, and I'm only allowed to type in certain areas that are colored. Other areas are automatic formulas.
Right.
And this one page where I do all my work generates 5 or 6 other reports out of that. That gives me a production report that I can hand to my guys so they see the labor hours I've allocated. It gives me my materials. It gives me my subcontractor pricing. It ties in with it gives me a QuickBooks report. I don't have it tie into QuickBooks at all.
Right.
So it's a separate way that I estimate. It also gives me my client report where I use that as a sales tool, and it's still a very effective sales tool. I've had this program over 15 years, or this spreadsheet, and it's very effective. I can modify it, but it lets the client know I know what they want in their job, or I have an understanding. And if I don't, we can talk about it point by point as opposed to just a big number at the end.
Well, I'll tell you, that is something that causes contractors a lot of problems when they have a big confusing proposal to put in front of the client. Some people think, oh, it's a great way to hide stuff, but it's actually a very difficult way to go about changes or talking about the scope of work or just tracking. And I'm sure you've seen these as well, but I've seen some horrendous proposals put in front of clients. This basically one run-on sentence. We will do this, then we'll do this, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and ABC. And well, that's not a proposal, and that's not a way to run the business. I'm not knocking anybody who's already successful doing that, but there's a time to level up and to use a system like yours, I guess.
Yeah, this really works well for us. I've been able to train others on using it. My son's one of our project managers. He's very adept at this, and we have a process, and it's duplicatable. We end up typing a lot of the same words, and then if we find we're doing that, we'll set that into our template. If we're using the same jargon, we almost kind of rewrite the scope that an architect, or if we don't have an architect involved, when we walk through and take notes, we'll try to describe in words what we saw and talked about in the field, or we see on the plans, instead of just saying per plans. We say 8 windows, staging. We'll describe what we're going to do. I try to keep it brief. I like the business parts of it to be more. How do I want to word it? But
punchy.
Yeah, I just want it to be specifics to the job. I don't want to put any fluff in it. Not a lot of adjectives. When I do the cover letter or the email cover letter, that's when I express my personality to them and how I feel about the job. But in the contract or in the proposal, it's task and phase, by phase.
Yeah. Well, I like your phase system, 3505, if I'm saying that right, means something to you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? 3505, but that means something throughout the whole company as well, right?
Everybody knows what 3505 is.
Yeah, and that's just is that one of your phases?
Well, let's see. 3505 is fabrication in the cabinet making shop. So when the guys are cutting parts and fabricating cabinets, they put that down 3505.
Right.
And then that segues into our QuickBooks report when we do when we enter any of our accounts payables or our payroll information. It's all by the code, whether it's field work or the cabinet making. And I'm happy to talk about cabinet making because that's really where we're doing a lot of this stuff. But I took the same concept and created the cabinet making phasing in the same. I actually just kind of cut and pasted a piece of my estimate template for cabinet making, and that's how we do that.
It's interesting. You're working on an Excel system that's 15 years old that you've been working on and tweaking, and you build thousands of hours that goes into that. But one of the things, you may have seen this as well, but there's this historical trend that goes on in cabinetry. Shops that started in the 80s look like this. They're using systems. Back in the 80s, if you got into computers, you were bleeding edge. And so they've got a lot of bandaged, Band-Aid, you know what I mean? Like duct tape together systems. If you started in the 90s, you have slightly more modified systems, a little more, things are grooving a little bit better. If you started in 2000s, you're in, the background business operations sticks together a bit better. And if you started in the last 10 years, now you've got cloud-based estimating softwares, and you've got Jobber to track where your guys are, and site photos to take. There's just a whole new array of things out there. Where would you suggest somebody starts if they're still on the yellow pad? Where should they jump to next?
I mean, at minimum, it should be some sort of electronic version. It's quicker, it's more professional looking, it's duplicatable. The math errors aren't there anymore. If you have the formula set right. So those things, and there are programs out there. I don't use any of them. I've looked at a lot of them, and I just didn't want to put the effort into trying to change them or change our way of thinking. I was just taught to think from the ground up in anything that I've been doing. but I'd certainly suggest that you start with some sort of I think even QuickBooks has a way of estimating as long as you can set it up properly. I totally suggest that. But we talk about lean and those types of things as well with cabinet making. You list out every single thing that you do on a piece of paper, then maybe you can group tasks into smaller, into groupings.
Right.
And I think that's a great way to go, so you don't end up with 5,000 different things on your electronic pad that was funny the way you presented that with maybe I'm old school, I don't know, but it seems to work. And the clients that I work with are, maybe similar, high school graduation times or something like that. But we're all, we're working for other professionals that are mature and so forth. And they really like the way that we present. It's somewhat personalized, but it's very easy. They tend to use mine to compare to others. And I hear it a lot. You're more money, but you've got the whole job included.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. But when my son came back to work with us about 3 years ago, he worked for a big company for a while. He came back as a project manager, and I was mentoring him on constantly mentoring. It's the highlight of my career, quite honestly, but to be able to work with my son, but teaching him my estimating and so forth. And they pick it up like this, and he's already worked on computer and cloud-based programs and plan reading, all this type of stuff. So when I called him one day to say, hey, how you doing with that estimate? You need any help? He goes, no, Dad, I put your sticks and your rocks back on your desk. He says, I got it on the computer upstairs already. I'm like, what?
Hey, that's the sign of good things, though. If he's taking what you're using and building on it, that's instead of trying to...
Even just in takeoffs and plan reading, I still have my mini tapes or my scale or, my little system of ticking things off. And, he uses a program that Bluebeam. He can pull a plan up on it, whether it's a cabinet plan or a house plan, and he can do the takeoff. And it's I can look at how he did it. He can give me a report that says this is the square footage area. This is what it's very visual for me, which I like. And there's technology out there, and there's some easy programs. It doesn't have to be difficult.
Yeah, the logic makes sense. The what's interesting is how many people in this industry all started the same way with just very simple beginnings. Like you started building houses, and then you moved into, you still build houses, but you also did cabinetry. And I talked to other people who are like, yeah, I built a kitchen for my aunt, and then I built another one, and now I've got a $3 million cabinet shop. And what happened? and it's just interesting, right? But things have to change as they go along. And one of the things you talked about on the yellow pad, which was materials or labor, materials, and subs, you talked about markup versus margin. Can we hit on that for a bit? Because it feels like, and I could be wrong, but it feels like sometimes people feel guilty marking up their work.
Sure. We still feel that way. I look at it and go, no way. They're not going to pay us for that. You still have that self. Am I worth it?
Yeah.
But when you lose money or time on a project, especially when you have other employees, when I used to lose money on a job when I was working myself in the field, I'd say, okay, I didn't make as much per hour as I thought I was going to make, but I still made $100 today. I didn't make $700 today, whatever the numbers were.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that real sense of loss. But when you're writing out checks and payroll and overhead, and you're losing money, and it still can happen, we still make mistakes or underestimate our own capabilities. Or overestimate, I should say. And you lose money, you learn, like, this is what it's going to take. I'm sorry, this is what it's going to take. And as I'm trying to transition to my son doing more of the work, and my manager is taking on more responsibility, I've got to accept that this is what's going to make it work. This is our system. This is what I need so that I can transition to the role that I want to eventually have here.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important. No matter what stage you're at, if you're starting out, you're in the middle, you're near the end, whatever your goals are, there's got to be a system. So the markup is important, and there's only one way to understand it is to read your profit and loss. So have someone sit down with you, your accountant or bookkeeper or a friend that understands how to read a profit and loss sheet and understand, like, here's where all the money that came in went. And just because it says you had a 5% profit at the end of $1 million year doesn't mean that you have, $50,000 in the bank. You made $50,000, but you spent it on things that you
didn't
a new
capture.
truck. Yeah. So
capture. Yeah.
I mean, it's in there. It's a psychological thing. It's the 50 grand
Yeah, where's the 50 grand on paper? And then you come home and have a conversation with your wife. You say, honey, the account says we made 5% this year. It's like, well, where's the money? And you're
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it went into heat, utilities, light, insurance, and all those things.
Right.
I just did an article for Forbes, and in light of current world situations, I understand why it kind of fell flat. But it was about St. Patrick's Day, and you're out that way where Boston is a big St. Patty's
Big
Day,
time. Yeah.
big thing. Well, they had asked me to do a St. Patrick's Day themed business article, and I thought, what? Come on, guys, you keep throwing me the hard ones, right? But I ended up doing something that a client of mine in the past had called the Leprechaun Report. This was years ago. This guy retermed it. And all it was is an end of job report where we take estimated versus actual costs. And he called it the Leprechaun Report because he found a pot of gold at the end. But it goes to what you're talking about here is that if I make money on every job, I'm going to make money at the end of the year. And so I need to go back and do these end of job reports because I'm going to learn. It's just like talking around a campfire. That's how I pass stories on from father to son, from mother to daughter. You're learning as you go. But if you don't do the end of job report, you're not learning from every job and getting better and remembering, we lost 5% on that job, which means we paid to do Mr. and Mrs. Jones' kitchen. We actually went there and then we paid them more money so we could build their kitchen. And we've got to stop that. It just means increasing your prices by 5% or whatever you need to capture, right?
Right.
How do you look at that?
I like the way you put it. I've heard them called post-mortem. I haven't heard the Leprechaun Report. I like that. I'll call it that when we hit the pot of gold. But it's estimated versus actual. That's exactly what job costing is. We estimate. So how do you track that? How do what's your metric? So we decided to do phase numbers. That's what my report shows. So 02 is setup, or 3505 is fabrication. So every task or every piece of material or every subcontractor, every invoice, every time card has a job code next to every hour. If we work 5 hours on 3505, it's the Jones job number 20-20, and it was 3505 today. So I estimated in 3505. How did I do in 3505? So I basically pull my estimate and I pull my QuickBooks report, and I set up my books so that all entries go in under these phases. So I estimate by phase and number, and I report back in the same format. I had a QuickBooks person come in and help me set this thing up. So every phase has a labor, materials, subs, and income category in QuickBooks. So if I'm building a cabin, I'm building a vanity, I can say, hey, one vanity at $3,000, or I can estimate and say CNC, drawing on CAD 1 hour. That's 3501.
Right.
So in my spreadsheet that I made, this template that I have, there's a 3501 category, and I already got some language in there that says, drawing, CNC time, assembly time, hardware, finishing. It might be 4 or 5 tasks that add up to $3,000, or it adds up to $2,000, and I'm marking it up to $3,000, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But I have that to start with. And then when I pull the job report, I pull the Leprechaun report, I can just quickly look at it, and I do a quick divisor. I know from my profit and loss year to year, based on an expected volume, that my percentage that I want to make for either a gross profit or a net profit is X. And I can pull up a really quick report on any job and look at my income versus my expenses, cost of goods sold, which is labor, materials, and subs, versus income. And I basically divide the profit into the sales price. And if I hit a number that I'm expecting, I don't dig any further. I might say, hey, how come we did really good on that? Or how come we didn't do as good? And try to look at, oh, wow, we underestimated. Oh, wait a minute, there was a change order on that. That should have been allocated towards this. We're okay.
Right.
Or, hey, guys, finishing really took a long time here, more than we thought. What happened? Why are we over on finishing? Oh, remember the spray booth went down and we had to send it out? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
So it's good. You got to take the time to do it.
See, that's
first,
Yeah, that's the point that we need to remember is it's fine to do an estimate. We all have to do an estimate to get the job, but you have to do the other part, which is the comparison afterwards.
Yeah.
And then what I also see, and I really like it when I see this, is when an owner takes the time to talk to their team about it and say, hey, let's do an end of job report. Jobs that do companies that do lots of jobs in a month, they might only take a selection. Companies that do 1 or 2 jobs a month because they're doing bigger engagements, they'll look at every one. But they'll say, hey, listen, let's all sit down before the next production meeting and review the last job. Here's the Jones job. Here's our estimated. Here's our actual. So why were we up in this category? Because we need to know that so that we can be up again, or maybe we were up too much and we allocated it wrong. I had one client who put mileage in the delivery column. So it was a 32-mile delivery, and they put that, and it ended up being 32 units of something else, and they made crazy cash on this job. They couldn't figure out why. And it turned out they put the wrong number in the wrong column, but the customer still accepted. Exactly, Ken.
Right.
They still got the job. So what does that tell them?
Well, they got to learn from that, because if you're overestimating, you're not going to get every client that just goes with it either. So you got to be competitive in your market, or have value at least for a client. So we've had a couple of those where we did really well on a job, and we just overestimated, or we were real efficient for some reason. It is not a perfect science. Looking at the numbers can be a perfect science, but the estimating portion, especially the labor, is the part that we're still wrestling with how to nail that. I wish it was just exact every time. It's not. So there's always a little give and take. And sometimes you look at a job and you did well, and you say, geez, I killed it on finishing. Why? Oh, it's a wrong code. It might just be in the wrong category. But I start at the bottom. I start at the big picture. My divisor worked. My division worked out well. I got the percentage I want. I write it on my report and I put it in the file.
Yeah.
If I see something not looking great, I pull it, say what's going on with this one. We haven't final billed yet, so my income side is going to go up, so my percentage is going to go up to where I want it to be. So the way I really compare it is whether you do a budget or you look at last year's profit and loss, that your accountant can give you, or if you understand how to pull it yourself out of your accounting package. But look at what the real indicator is what your gross profit is. It's some percentage of sales. Everything's divided by sales. I look at everything as a division of sales, no matter what. Even if I look at first month, first quarter, halfway through the year, I always look at everything as a division of sales. And so even my own officer's salary is a division of sales. I have a number I'd like to be making as an owner along the way. So if I'm working for 1%, it's probably not worth it. So I have a number in my head that I want to see.
Yeah.
But you get to that gross profit margin, and then you got to look at what your overhead is as a percentage of sales. And at the very end, the net number is going to be a plus. You got to take the. It's got to be a plus, or you're going to go out of business.
Yeah. How do you remember the first time you calculated your actual overheads?
One of my vendors, he was actually a sales manager at a lumber yard. He said to me one day, I said, geez, that price seems high. Can't you do any better for me? He goes, it cost me 17% to turn the lights on. Like, what the hell are you talking about? He says, my overhead just to turn the building on is 17%. His boss had told him that.
Sure.
He says, so, but he had sales goals and he had percentages he had to work off of, and he knew that he couldn't, the gap between 17 and whatever he was going to get was going to help, pay the overhead and his commission.
Yeah.
Whatever else he had to do. So he was motivated to make it right. He couldn't sell it to me for 15% markup.
Right.
And I said, that put it in perspective for me. And that's probably the first time I've read my profit and loss. I've read my balance sheet. This was, halfway through my career probably, but to really understand my P&L and to be able to sit down with my banker and to talk to him about it and to talk about specifics. We rent space for our shop. We rent it off of myself. I own a real estate company and we rent off ourselves. So if anyone owns anyone owns this shop, even if it's in your backyard, you own your shop, you should be paying yourself rent. And if you're paying yourself rent and you can count that and say, listen, banker, the percentages only look a certain way, but look what else we're benefiting out of.
Here's the other side of the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes towards your value of your business.
Yeah. It's so critical. And this comes to the markup and margin question that you promised to answer. So I'm going to hold you to it. But
right.
But there's a time for all of us when we have to either go figure out our actual overheads. I mean, right down to the toilet paper and the styrofoam cups in the coffee room.
Yep.
Those things are a real cost. And so when I'm feeling guilty about adding above labor and materials to a job, I have to remember I'm paying for everything that's happening in the shop just to turn it on. So it seems like you clued in on that perfect example when the guy said, look, it's 17% just to turn on the lights. Well, we all have that number.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not a hard number to find. It might be a hard number to swallow, but it's not a hard number to find.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
And you know, it relates to volume. So if my fixed costs, if I keep business kind of the same model, my fixed costs shouldn't go up. My overhead shouldn't go up too much, maybe incrementally. But if I can increase my volume, I can get those percentages to be a little bit less. You know, they work a little bit easier. And as the year goes on, and some of the insurance bills get paid off, or some of our tax dollars, we only have to go up to a certain value on our employee salaries and some of the taxation. You know, from October to December, we can make a choice to even lower our numbers a little bit, because we're feeding the bottom line more than we are, because our fixed costs stay the same.
Right.
So if we can increase volume, 5%, a lot of that's going to drop to the bottom line. I don't know if you follow that reasoning at all, but
I do. Yeah.
When you do using percentages, dividing two numbers, so the bigger you can make, that the sales number, the better it is for all these numbers. When volume's slow and my overhead stays the same, my overhead percentage looks ridiculous. Like, how can it be 27% overhead to keep this place going? Every dollar I sell, 25 cents goes to keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
Too much. What's going on? What are we going to do?
Yeah, but it's some number. It might not be 25 or 27 cents, but it is a number.
Yes,
and we need to know that, or we're never going to be profitable.
Right. And then you want to have, our industry average in construction anyway is 3 to 5% net profit. That's not a whole lot of, you do millions of dollars and you're getting 3 to 5%. We want to beef that up. We want more than that. And it depends on where an owner puts his salary. If that's in cost of goods sold, if he's doing the task, or if he's in overhead as a business manager.
Right.
But at the bottom, at the end, you got to figure out where you want to be for yourself and for your company to keep it going year to year. So when you if you decide that you need 20% to cover everything, you can't just take your costs and market times 1.2, because you won't be making 20%. You'll be making like 16% or something, and you're going to miss your mark. Yeah. And that's something that I really want to drill into. Anybody that can learn this, it was an aha moment for me, that I realized that marking up 20% is not putting 20% to the bottom line the way that we do our division.
Right. And why is that?
Well, because the real, to get a 20% net profit, you take your
you've got it on your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it.
Yeah. If you take your profit that you made on the job, your gross profit, if you sold a job for $1,000 and you made $200 on it, you divide 200 into that 1,000 to see what your profit is. It's not 20%. So when you do the division, it comes out to be a smaller number. I don't have my calculator, but I can do a million examples for you. But
yeah, I think it's your markup divisor from your PowerPoint is 80.80. And the multiplier is 125.
Yeah, so if I don't have it in front of me, so I can recall it the way that I like to say it. So let's say you did a job and it was $100 was your cost of goods sold. It was $25 an hour for labor, and it was so much for materials. So it was $100. So I'm going to make 20%. You times it times 1.2. So you got $120. You take your $20 profit.
Yeah.
You divide it by the sales price. 20 divided by 120. Is 16.6%. You didn't cover your overhead.
And there's the 4%.
So you lost it, So if you see my chart there, I don't have it in front of me, but if I want to net a 20%, what does it say on my divisor side of the formula there?
0.80. So
0.80.
Yeah.
So if I take $100 as my cost, divided by 0.8, my sale price is $125, not 120. 25 divided by 125, 20%.
There you go.
You follow that math? So
I do, and it's not intuitive though, because you would think it's a little trick with numbers, but it could be happening to a business owner again and again, and they're saying to themselves, "Why am I at zero? I should be making 4 or 5, 6%." It could be lost right in that very simple calculation.
So we make it a goal of 35% is our goal. We're not hitting that all the time, but a 35% gross profit, which will pay my overhead out of that, and my net profit out of that. Right. So to do that, I divide by 0.65. I take my cost of goods sold. If I'm going to sell it, if I figure it's going to cost me $10,000 to build something, I divide it by 0.65. My sell price is $15,385.
I'm writing notes. That's why you see me looking over here. Yeah.
So then I take my profit, which is $53.85, and divide it by the sale price, $15,385. I end up with 35% gross profit. Gross profit will pay my 17% to keep the lights on and give me 18%.
Right. Yeah.
Which would be a great number. But
I hope people are taking notes on this or taking the time. I mean, this is the kind of conversations you guys had around at the conference. That was a normal breakfast conversation for you guys.
That's great. That's great. That's what you want to hear. That's what we're all about, is trying to learn from each other in these areas.
Yeah.
These are goals. We don't always hit them. We miss the mark sometimes. We've underestimated plenty of times. The net result is we're doing okay. We're making our numbers. Not all the way every time through the year. When you look at your profit and loss, it's just a picture in time. You got to start to take cumulative quarters, weeks, quarters, et cetera, and kind of see where you're at. But we made it a conscious effort the last couple of years to try to get money ahead of time for get the right deposits from client bill, so that we're using their money. So anytime I look at my job costs, even if I do this division partway through a job, we're carrying our own overhead and expenses all the way through a job.
Yeah,
that's the goal anyway.
There is a cash. The cost of carrying cash internally, it varies depending on internal interest rates and external, but it's about $3 on 1,000.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. Per month.
Plus the anxiety.
Plus nobody's carrying $1,000 in product. You're carrying $10,000, $100,000. Or you're doing a buyout for architectural panels that are coming from overseas. And the GC pushed that expense to you, and you're thinking, oh, it's okay. I'll just carry that 250, 500 grand for this job. And we become a bank. How did the GCs must have business coaches? I don't know who they are, but I don't like them.
I'm a GC as well, and and it doesn't. It's a myth. I'm not sitting there with everybody's money all the time. But
I don't know if you've noticed. Do you do commercial work or more residential?
We do more residential. We do commercial interiors. And a lot of that's our shop-based stuff, but. We do more interiors than anything, and then on commercial side, houses we'll do ground up. Commercial we do interiors. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll build a small building, but that's it.
Yeah. So if you're more on the residential side, maybe it's a different trend. But I've noticed over the years that general contractors seem to have gotten really good at pushing some of the costs down to the subcontractors. So, for instance, the sub is now responsible for the buyouts of glass, upholstery, steel, things like that for commercial work, right? And it's just an interesting change. So you think, well, that had to start somewhere. And
my son has perspective on that. He worked for a big commercial company, and they're just constantly, they might carry it in two categories or push it down on a sub, and that's how they're making this. A lot of their open book stuff is like a 3% profit. Who's covering themselves on a 3% profit? So they're pushing it. They're making their money somewhere along the way, and that's how they're doing it. Yeah.
Those are the times, though, Ken, that I laugh, because I know somewhere in another office in another part of the world, there's a business coach who's doing the opposite of me, because I'm working with my clients trying to get it, and I'm like, oh, that's a business coach on the other side who's giving them these great ideas, and I'm awesome. Like, who is that guy? I got to go find him.
You're not competitive, are you? Look at you.
Oh, no, I'm so casual and easygoing.
No, I like your style a lot.
You just know it's there, though. Geez, there's so much more to know here, and you had gone through a presentation. I know it's on the Cabinet Makers Association website for those people that are already members. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you or find out more about the CMA, how do they do that? So
Cabinet Makers Association, we can go online and find us. You can contact me directly anytime. My email is ken@premierbuildersinc.net. Maybe you can post that with what you do. I'm here in Georgetown, Massachusetts. We're about 25 miles north of Boston, close to the coast, close to New Hampshire. So I'm happy to talk business with anybody. I like talking shop. So,
yeah. It was a very open group you had there. It seemed like everybody knew each other. It was very casual and friendly, and nobody was really hiding anything, just very open about the challenges they had and how to overcome them. And it was neat.
It really is designed to be a collaborative. We really want people to network and talk and help each other out. We're not usually competing with each other out there. We're trying to help each other out. Most of us have come from the field up, and we need to learn some of these business things. And it changed my life by being able to start to understand my profit and loss and how to make money doing the craft that we really enjoy doing.
Yeah. Ken, thank you. I think a lot of people probably perked up their ears. You had a ton of golden nuggets in here for people. That's good.
It can get confusing. I'm happy to reiterate or pass along my presentation to anybody that wants it.
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, thank you. Now we do show notes. So maybe if you're okay with it, I could post your presentation, your PowerPoint in the show notes for people to look at.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free.
Thank you. That'll save you maybe a step on emails back and forth.
Great.
All right, Ken. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate having you here. And it was, again, great to meet you face to face. I worry about the future of face-to-face meetings going forward. So we got that one in right under the wire.
Perfect. Yeah, it was great to meet you too, Dominic. And thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
For sure.
Good
Have
luck,
a great
everybody.
day.